Between the hours of 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., there is a profound stillness that often surrounds us. It is a time when the world seems to be suspended in quiet, when the noise of everyday life takes a pause, and when we are most vulnerable to the whispers of the divine. These hours are not just a mark of time, but a sacred window when God calls us to rise, to awaken, to listen. Have you ever been stirred from sleep at these specific hours, feeling a sudden urgency, a pull in your spirit? Maybe it's a feeling of restlessness, or perhaps a strong sense of presence that you can't quite place, but it's undeniable. The stirrings of the soul are heightened in this sacred span of time. God has a reason, a purpose for waking us during these hours. And if we are sensitive enough, we may find ourselves stepping into the divine rhythm He has set for our lives. It's more than just waking up early. It's about tuning into a higher frequency. When we are roused from our sleep, it's not just our body that is being shaken awake. It's our spirit. There's something powerful that happens in the quiet of these early hours. It's the kind of time when the distractions of the day are not yet here, when the worries of the world have not yet taken over, and when the light of dawn has not yet broken the darkness. In this moment, God speaks, and He speaks in a way that is different from the rest of the day. God doesn't wake us up at this time by chance. There's an intentionality to it. He knows the times when we need to be still, when we need to listen, and when we need to focus. When we awake during these sacred hours, it's as though the veil between the natural and the supernatural is thinner. It's a time when the distractions of life don't hold as much weight and the noise of the world doesn't drown out His voice. This is when God seeks to speak directly to our hearts, to give us insight and to guide us on the path He has for us. This is not a coincidence. This is the moment of divine intervention. God understands that in the quiet stillness of the night, we are most vulnerable. It's in that vulnerability that we experience transformation. The world has not yet started its hustle and bustle, so the only thing we are left to focus on is Him. In these moments, He invites us to rise, not only physically, but spiritually, to enter into His presence. The Bible speaks of the importance of waiting on the Lord, of seeking Him in the stillness. And in these quiet hours, God offers us a sacred space to commune with Him. This moment is one of transition. It's not just about waking up early, it's about a shift in the spirit. When God wakes you up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., He's often calling you to a new level of spiritual awareness. It's an invitation to come into a deeper intimacy with Him. It's during these hours that God desires to reveal things to you that He cannot reveal during the busyness of the day. He doesn't wake you up simply to disrupt your rest. He wakes you up to awaken your heart, to speak into your soul in ways that only silence can carry. You might feel the urge to pray, to journal, or simply to sit in quiet contemplation. Maybe you don't even know why you're awake, but something is stirring deep within. Perhaps you feel overwhelmed or even uncertain of what God is trying to tell you. But trust in this, it's not by accident. God is about to reveal something, whether it's a dream, a vision, a word, or simply a sense of peace. He's giving you a glimpse into His purpose for your life, and He's inviting you to be fully present in this moment. There's an undeniable power in the early hours of the morning. It's during this time that many of us find clarity, direction, and purpose. The Bible speaks of seeking God early, of rising with the sun and allowing His guidance to direct our steps. It's in these early hours that God strengthens our faith, deepens our relationship with Him, and prepares us for what lies ahead. The hustle and bustle of the world hasn't begun to take over your mind. You're still in a state of rest, still in a position to hear. God knows that it's in these early hours that we are most open to change. When we sleep, our guard is down, our hearts are soft, and our minds are uncluttered. It's as if we've been placed into a sacred place where we can receive from God without distraction, without the weight of the world crowding our thoughts. When you are awakened during these hours, it's a chance for God to plant a seed within you that will grow and bear fruit as you go about your day. It's a time of preparation. God speaks to us through various means in these moments. It could be through a song that you hear in your spirit, a scripture that suddenly comes to mind, or a still small voice that nudges you to pray. You might even receive a word of encouragement or a revelation that you had not considered before. Whatever it is, it's the voice of God calling you to rise and meet Him. He's calling you to leave behind the distractions of your life, to quiet your heart, and to receive from Him in a way that the world cannot offer. As you sit in this quiet space, you may begin to feel a burden or a sense of urgency. God uses these hours to stir our hearts for what he's about to do. It's a time when he places things in your spirit that you need to act upon, pray for, or meditate on. God may place a desire on your heart, a vision, or even a person to intercede for. This time is often when God calls us to be a conduit of his will, whether it's to encourage someone, to start something new, or to step out in faith in ways we hadn't planned. The discipline of rising early is not just about getting up physically, it's about cultivating a habit of being in God's presence. Just as we train our bodies to wake up and get going, we must also train our spirits to be alert, to listen, and to receive from God in these quiet moments. The more we surrender to this discipline, the more we find ourselves experiencing God's presence and hearing his voice in ways that transform us. Each time you rise between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., it's a step towards spiritual maturity, a step toward alignment with God's will. When you rise during these sacred hours, God is inviting you to be part of his divine plan for your life and the lives of others. The time may come when you feel overwhelmed by the tasks ahead, but it's in these early hours that God provides the strength, the wisdom, and the courage you need to face those challenges. He knows that when we are obedient in these early hours, we are better equipped to handle the demands of the day. He doesn't wake us up to burden us, he wakes us up to prepare us, to empower us and to equip us for the journey ahead. We often don't realize the impact of these early morning awakenings until later, when we see how God has used those moments to shape our destiny. Maybe you didn't know exactly what God was doing at the time, but as the days unfold, you begin to see his hand at work. Maybe it was in those quiet moments that he gave you the peace to make a difficult decision or the strength to persevere through a challenging situation. Sometimes it's not until later that we realize the divine intervention that took place in those quiet hours. You might find that when you wake up during these hours, you are filled with a sense of peace that doesn't come from your circumstances, but from a deeper place. You may experience an overwhelming sense of God's presence, as if he is right there beside you, whispering words of comfort and strength. It's in these moments that God gives us a glimpse of his eternal nature, a reminder that he is always present, always aware, and always ready to speak to his children. As you rise to meet him in these hours, understand that he is doing something significant in you. These early morning moments are not just about what happens in the physical realm, they are about what God is doing in the spiritual realm. He's using this time to prepare you for something greater, something that goes beyond the immediate challenges you may be facing. It's a moment of divine connection, a moment of being fully aligned with God's will, and a moment of being strengthened for the journey ahead. This is not just a call to wake up, it's a call to rise up spiritually, to be alert and attentive to what God is speaking into your life. It's a moment of divine timing, a moment when heaven and earth meet, and when God is ready to pour out his wisdom, peace, and direction into your life. When God wakes you between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., it's not just a physical awakening, it's a spiritual awakening, one that can transform your life if you choose to step into it. God wakes you up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. to draw you into a deeper, more intimate relationship with him. These hours provide a sacred moment for spiritual reflection, clarity, and divine guidance, free from the distractions of the world. Waking up during these early hours is a call to spiritual readiness. God uses this time to equip you with the strength, wisdom, and peace needed to face the challenges of the day ahead and to align you with his greater purpose for your life. The quiet of the early morning is an opportunity to tune into God's voice. It's a moment to be obedient to his call, whether through prayer, meditation, or action, allowing God to direct your steps and reveal his plans for you in the stillness. God's divine timing is far beyond our comprehension. It is not merely about the clocks and schedules that dictate our daily routines, but about a higher spiritual rhythm that governs the universe. When you find yourself waking up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., it's not a coincidence. This is often a time when God calls his children to a deeper level of connection with him. It's during these hours of the morning when the world is still and the noise of the day has not yet begun that God seeks to awaken something in your spirit. The stillness of these hours holds a profound purpose. It is during this quiet time that we are most receptive to hearing God's voice. The distractions of life, the noise of social media, the rush of work, the demands of family have not yet crowded our minds. Our hearts are tender and open, and in this sacred space, God speaks in ways that we may not hear during the hustle of the day. There is a divine invitation to step away from the noise and listen, to discern the whispers of God that can so easily be drowned out during the busyness of the day. The Bible speaks of the importance of waiting on God, of seeking Him early in the morning. Proverbs 8:17 says, "I love those who love me, and those who seek me find me." In these early hours, God is inviting you to seek Him in a special way, to draw near to His presence in a way that you cannot when your mind is full of the world's concerns. There is a deeper connection to be made when we wake in the stillness of the night, when our hearts are uncluttered and open to receive. This time of divine timing is an awakening, a spiritual awakening specifically. It's not just about getting up early or following a religious routine. It's about awakening your spirit to God's purposes and plans. It's about being attuned to His voice, to His direction, and to His calling. Waking up in the quiet hours of the morning is an invitation to step away from the world and into His presence, to become more aware of what He's doing in your life. When you are awakened at this time, it's often a moment to press into what God is doing in the spiritual realm. We may not always understand the full significance of why we are awake at that hour, but we can trust that God is doing something important. He is stirring something deep within you, calling you to rise above the distractions of the day and focus solely on Him. It is in these moments that God can reveal insights, give clarity, and speak peace into your soul in a way that is hard to come by when you are busy or distracted. The act of waking up early can be seen as an act of obedience. It is a surrender to God's will, a decision to rise up in faith, even when you don't understand the full purpose. God may be awakening you to prepare you for something ahead, something He wants to reveal, something that will require your attention, your prayers, or your obedience. In these moments, God does not want you to miss the opportunity to receive from Him. Your willingness to answer His call, to rise from your sleep, shows a hunger for more of Him and a heart willing to be shaped by His timing. During these early hours, there is a heightened awareness of the divine. The Holy Spirit often moves more freely during this time because there are fewer distractions. It is during these quiet moments that the presence of God feels closer and more tangible. In the stillness, you may find yourself moved to pray, to worship, or simply to sit in His presence. Whatever the response, the time you spend in communion with God during this window is deeply significant. It is not about what you do, but about being present with God, allowing Him to fill your heart with peace, with purpose, and with His presence. Many of the great figures in the Bible understood the power of divine timing and spiritual awakening through early morning moments. Jesus Himself often withdrew to quiet places early in the morning to pray, to commune with His Father, and to align His spirit with the will of God. He understood that the busyness of the day could overwhelm the soul, so He sought out the quiet hours to prepare Himself spiritually for what lay ahead. Just as Jesus took time in the early hours, we too can find deep spiritual growth in rising early, even when the world is asleep. God's divine timing doesn't follow our understanding of time. It's not about the clock, but about His perfect moment to connect with us. These early hours are often a time when God knows we are most vulnerable, when our spirits are open and receptive to the things He wants to show us. It is a time when we are more likely to hear His voice clearly, and when our hearts are more sensitive to the subtle promptings of the Holy Spirit. We may not fully understand why we are awake at this time, but we can trust that it's part of God's plan to align us with His purposes. The invitation to wake up during these hours is an opportunity to reset, to renew, and to focus. It's not just about waking up physically, but about awakening spiritually. It's a call to hear from God, to allow Him to speak into our lives, and to receive from Him the peace and clarity that we need. These early hours offer a unique opportunity to press in, to hear God's voice, and to align ourselves with His will for the day. It's in the quiet of these moments that we can receive divine wisdom, spiritual direction, and the peace that only comes from spending time in God's presence. In these moments of divine awakening, we learn the power of stillness, the importance of quiet, and the significance of being sensitive to God's timing. It is not merely a time to check off a spiritual task, but to embrace a deeper relationship with the Creator. Through the discipline of waking up early, we come to understand that God's timing is always perfect, and that in these quiet moments, we can encounter Him in ways that change our hearts, our lives, and our futures. When God wakes you up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., it's not just an interruption of your rest, it's an invitation to prepare for something significant. God's calling during these early hours is not random, nor is it simply a call to start your day early. It is a sacred moment where He is preparing you for what lies ahead, aligning your spirit with His divine plan. This time is a preparation for purpose, an opportunity to receive the guidance, strength, and wisdom needed to navigate the challenges and opportunities that the day will bring. Preparation for purpose begins with an understanding that God's timing is always intentional. In these quiet hours, you are not just being awakened to pray or meditate, but to receive spiritual nourishment and insight that will fuel you throughout the day. The stillness of the early morning is the perfect environment for God to speak to you without the distractions and noise that often fill your day. When you rise in these sacred hours, you are stepping into a moment where God can directly equip you for the purpose He has set before you. In these early moments of the day, God might not reveal the entire picture of your purpose, but He will give you exactly what you need to take the next step. Whether it's a word of encouragement, a scripture, a thought to ponder, or a specific action to take, these moments serve as preparation for the journey ahead. God understands the importance of spiritual preparation, and He knows that to fulfill His plans for your life, you need to be spiritually equipped and ready to respond to His leading. These early morning awakenings are a way of aligning you with His heart and mind so that you can walk confidently in the direction He has ordained for you. In these hours, God often gives us clarity. There may be decisions that need to be made or problems that require solutions. The early morning provides an uninterrupted time to seek God's direction without the constant barrage of demands and distractions. When you awaken during this window, it's a time to press into God's presence, to ask for wisdom, and to listen for His voice. You may be facing uncertainty, but in these quiet moments, God speaks peace and direction, preparing you to make decisions that align with His purpose for your life. Sometimes the preparation is more internal than external. God may awaken you during these hours to work on your character, to prune areas of your life that need attention, or to strengthen your resolve in areas where you may be weak. Preparing for purpose isn't just about being ready for external challenges. It's also about being ready to carry the responsibility of the purpose God has called you to. These early hours are often when God reveals areas of growth in your life, calling you to a deeper level of spiritual maturity. The time spent in prayer and reflection during this period is not wasted. It is a necessary preparation to develop the inner strength and wisdom needed to fulfill God's purpose. This preparation can also be a time of personal reflection and vision casting. God uses these early hours to help you focus on what is ahead, to clarify your goals, and to remind you of the promises He has spoken over your life. It's a time to remind yourself of your purpose, to seek God for vision, and to solidify your sense of direction. The early morning is a sacred time to cast aside doubts and to renew your confidence in the plans God has for you. It's in these quiet moments that God reminds you of your calling, giving you the strength to move forward with renewed vision and purpose. As you rise in these hours, God is often preparing you spiritually to deal with the challenges that you will face throughout the day. You may not know what lies ahead, but He does. These early morning moments are an opportunity to equip yourself with the spiritual tools necessary to face whatever challenges come your way. Whether it's strength to endure difficult circumstances, wisdom to make difficult decisions, or peace to remain steady in the midst of chaos, God uses these hours to give you what you need. You are not waking up for no reason. God is preparing you for the assignments that He has set before you, and He is fortifying you with everything you will need. Often God will use these moments to prepare you emotionally as well. Life's journey is full of ups and downs, and the purpose you are being called to will require emotional resilience and stability. During these early hours, God can speak directly to your heart, offering healing for past hurts, peace for current struggles, and strength to move forward in the face of adversity. He may reveal areas of emotional healing that need to take place so that you can be fully equipped to step into the purpose He has for you. It's a time to allow God to work in your heart, preparing you to respond with grace, patience, and love, even in challenging circumstances. The early morning moments of awakening are a time of spiritual alignment. In these quiet hours, God is calling you to align your heart with his will, to be sensitive to his leading, and to ready yourself for the purpose he has set before you. You may not know the full picture of what God is doing, but you can trust that he is equipping you step by step, moment by moment. These early hours are a gift, an opportunity to prepare yourself spiritually, emotionally, and mentally for the challenges ahead. In addition to spiritual growth, God may also be preparing you physically for your purpose. While the focus of these hours is often more on the inner workings of your soul, it's also a time for practical preparation. You may be stirred to begin a new project, set new goals, or take the next step in an area of your life. God uses these early moments to set you on the right track, to give you clarity on what needs to be done, and to motivate you to take action. Whether it's something as simple as getting organized or as complex as taking on a new responsibility, God uses the stillness of these hours to show you what is required to walk out the purpose he has for you. Preparation for purpose is not just about getting ready for the future. It's about becoming the person God needs you to be today in order to fulfill the calling on your life. It's a continuous process of growth, realignment, and obedience. As you rise during these sacred hours, God is constantly shaping you, refining you, and preparing you for what is ahead. And although you may not see the full picture, you can rest assured that God's preparation in your life is intentional, detailed, and designed for the fulfillment of his divine purpose. Awareness and obedience go hand in hand in our relationship with God. The call to wake up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. is not merely a physical waking, but a spiritual awakening. These quiet hours are a time when God seeks to draw our attention to his presence, to sharpen our awareness of his voice, and to invite us into deeper obedience. The moment we awaken, it is as if the veil between the natural and the supernatural thins, and we are given an opportunity to respond to God's call. This call is not just to listen, but to act, to obey, and to align ourselves with his will. When God wakes us during these hours, he is offering us a moment of divine clarity, a sacred space where we can tune our hearts to his voice. It is easy to get caught up in the noise of the world, in the rush of daily responsibilities, and in the distractions that pull us away from God. However, in the stillness of the night, when everything else is quiet, our hearts are more attuned to God's whispers. This heightened awareness is a gift, a moment when we can hear God more clearly and respond with greater intention. He speaks to us not only through words, but also through a deep sense of peace, a stirring in our hearts, or a sudden realization that we need to turn our attention to something important. Being aware of God's presence is not just about hearing his voice, it is about recognizing his guidance and his work in every moment of our lives. In the early hours, when we awaken in the silence, we are invited to become more sensitive to his movements. It is in these quiet moments that God can illuminate areas of our lives where he wants to work, areas that may require healing, transformation, or redirection. It may be a thought, a vision, or a deep knowing that God wants us to take a certain action or make a change. In these early hours, our awareness of his will is sharpened because the distractions of the day have not yet taken hold of our minds. Awareness requires us to be present. When God awakens us in the early morning, it is an invitation to be fully present with him, to engage our hearts and minds in a way that allows us to hear and understand his instructions. In a world full of distractions, we often find it difficult to be present in our relationship with God. We may pray or read the Bible, but our thoughts can drift and our minds may wander. The quiet hours of the morning, however, offer us the chance to be fully present with him, to focus entirely on his voice and what he is speaking to us. This is a sacred opportunity to become more aware of the ways God is moving in our lives and to understand the divine purposes he is calling us toward. However, awareness alone is not enough. Awareness must lead to obedience. God does not wake us up in these early hours just to give us a moment of clarity or peace. He calls us to act on what he reveals. Obedience is the next step in the process. When we hear God's voice and understand his guidance, we are called to step out in faith and respond to his leading. This may involve making changes in our lives, taking risks, or stepping into new territories. Obedience requires us to trust God fully even when we do not fully understand the path ahead. It requires surrendering our will to his, allowing him to direct our steps according to his perfect plan. Obedience is often the hardest part of the process, especially when God asks us to do something that is difficult or uncomfortable. Yet it is in these moments of obedience that our faith is tested and strengthened. God may be calling us to forgive someone who has hurt us, to take a step of faith in our career or ministry, or to release something that has been holding us back. Obedience may involve a change in our attitudes, a new perspective on a situation, or a shift in our priorities. Whatever it is, obedience requires action. It is not enough to simply hear God's voice. We must be willing to move in response to what He has revealed. These moments of obedience, though challenging, are opportunities for growth. Every time we choose to obey God, we build our trust in Him and we become more aligned with His will. It is through our obedience that God's purpose is fulfilled in our lives. Our willingness to act on His promptings allows us to step into the destiny He has prepared for us. These early hours are a time when God calls us to take action, to make decisions that align with His will, and to trust that He will guide us every step of the way. Obedience also requires humility. It is an acknowledgement that God knows what is best for us, even when we don't fully understand the reasoning behind His instructions. It requires us to lay down our own desires, our own plans, and our own understanding in favor of God's perfect wisdom. Humility and obedience means surrendering our control and trusting that God's way is always better than our own. It means recognizing that His timing, even if it doesn't align with our own, is always for our good. These moments of divine awareness and obedience, especially in the early hours, are transformative. They help us grow spiritually, deepen our trust in God, and align our lives more fully with His purposes. As we respond to God's call, we move closer to the person He has created us to be. We learn to listen more intently to His voice and to follow His guidance with confidence. In these sacred moments, God shapes us, molds us, and prepares us to walk in the fullness of the life He has called us to live. In the quiet of the early morning hours, as we rise to meet God, we are given a precious opportunity to be aware of His presence and obedient to His leading. These moments are sacred, transformative, and powerful. As we respond to God's call, we are not only awakened physically, but also spiritually, aligning ourselves with His purpose for our lives. Our awareness of His voice and our willingness to obey Him deepen our relationship with Him and position us to fulfill His plan for our lives in ways we may never have imagined.